When he counted all the blows delivered to the chest, head, and neck, he calculated that there were exactly 48 blows. Hello, welcome to another episode of Criminal Patrol. Well, this story is probably less known. This story actually happened in Komorniki. Komorniki is a small village near Śląska, and this story is from 2014. It started exactly on November 17th. Dominika lived there in Komorniki. Dominika attended school complex number 1 in Śląska. She was a very ambitious girl in her final year of high school, and she was also thinking about taking the advanced English exam, and she used to commute from Komorniki to Śląska for those classes twice a week. And that's how it was. On November 17th, she went for another English lesson. I invite you to watch the next episode. The village of Komorniki is rather small, but there is a special economic zone there with quite a few different companies, including foreign companies, altogether a dozen or so companies. So as you can see from this, in reality there are actually a lot more people living there. This is also important in this case because it shows that the scale of all this was simply much larger. Dominika lived in Komorniki together with her parents, her grandmother, and also her younger brother. She was in her final year of high school at the Economic Technical School. She was about to take her final exams, and she was also thinking that after passing them, she would go to university in Wrocław. She simply wanted to become a teacher. That was her dream, just like any girl who is just starting out in life. Dominika's mother, Mrs. Violeta, always said she was very proud of her daughter. In fact, above all, she did well in school. At home, she was such a helpful, well-liked, cheerful girl with lots of friends, both girls and boys, acquaintances. She was basically everywhere, so everyone just liked her. For Dominika herself, of course, in 2014, the most important thing for her was the final exams because it was kind of a window to the world. But she also had her passions, and one of them was Japan. She was fascinated by everything related to Japan. She dreamed that when she had some money, she would of course go to Japan. But back then, she collected posters and drawings. She also drew and painted things related to Japan herself. That was her dream, but I think it was also because of all that she got herself a Japanese-style tattoo on her wrist. I don't know exactly what it meant. I don't know if anyone knew. Maybe it was her secret, but anyway, she had this small tattoo on her wrist. Something, let's call it in Japanese, well, that fateful one. November 17th was on one hand a very interesting and exciting day for Dominika. That day, her class went on a trip to Wrocław. They spent the afternoon sightseeing in Wrocław, and it was quite an experience. She was happy about all of it, but in the afternoon she had to come back because she had her English classes that afternoon. From Komorniki to Śląska isn't far, it's just about 2 kilometers. But on that day, it just so happened that their neighbor was going to Śląska and told Dominika that he would simply give her a ride. And that's what happened. She went to those classes. They were from 4:30 post-meridium to 7 o'clock post-meridium, but that day, around 6:30 post-meridium, which was about half an hour before the end of the class, she told the lecturer that she wanted to be excused because she wasn't feeling well, and that's what actually happened. Well, theoretically, she wasn't feeling well. She left half an hour earlier than usual, which means there was still half an hour left until 7 o'clock post-meridium. But Dominika didn't make it home. It was 8 o'clock post-meridium. A few minutes after 8 o'clock post-meridium, she didn't call. She didn't give any sign of life. Of course, her parents started to worry about what happened. They got in the car and went to Środa Śląska, to the school, but the school was already closed. Then they went to her best friend's place. Well, the friend only said that she knew Dominika was at the classes and that she left half an hour earlier. But as for what happened, she has no idea. The parents came back, started to wait a bit, but also began looking for her. They informed the neighbors and the family. It turned into a bit of a community search. Everyone started looking for her, as it happens in these kinds of towns where information spreads quickly, but unfortunately they didn't find any trace. In the morning, the father decided to notify the police. He went to the station and reported everything, and when he was driving back, he also saw, because this is Route 94, this is the route that leads from Komorniki to Środa Śląska. He saw that there was a screen by the road, the kind the police usually set up when a tragedy happens on the road. He even got out of the car and walked over to see, but the police officers didn't let him get close. He didn't insist and walked away, maybe partly because he didn't allow himself to think that something bad could have happened to his daughter, and also, well, it was just a screen by the road, yeah. Everything indicated that it was an unfortunate accident, and he went back home. And so they started waiting again, looking for Dominika, waiting for some sign, and the police began checking what was happening and where Dominika had simply gone.
The end?
The police decided to search this road, Road 94, on the section from Środa Śląska to Komorniki. Usually Dominika would come back either by car with her friend or by some kind of bus. Basically, she never walked home, but that day she decided to actually walk, maybe because she wasn't feeling well and wanted to get some fresh air. The fact is that Dominika is recorded by a camera at the gas station. You can see the girl walking in that direction. Komornik has only a few hundred meters left to walk. She's walking calmly, with her purse over her shoulder, walking peacefully, and basically nothing bad is happening. And you can see that she's just walking down that road. Besides, the fact that Dominika is walking this route was also confirmed by her friend, because Dominika kept sending her text messages as she walked. It's after 8 post-meridium, okay, it's November, so it's already dark at that hour. Maybe she was just scared too. She felt safer when she was texting her friend and her friend was replying. The police are reviewing the surveillance footage. Naturally, the parents wonder what happened, with various theories and versions. They know that she has a great relationship with them, that her mom is like her friend, her confidant, that she knows everything about her, but she's 19 years old. There were all kinds of assumptions that maybe she had a love she didn't want to talk about, but her mom ruled that out, saying it was simply impossible, that her daughter would definitely have told her. Everyone here keeps wondering what could have happened. All of this is happening more or less at the same time. The parents go to the police station again. Mrs. Violeta, Dominika's mother, felt unwell. Paramedics had to be called and they arrived. Yeah, they're just talking like regular people. She tells her what happened and one of the paramedics says to her, "You know, ma'am, today we had a report about the body of a young girl who has some kind of Japanese tattoo, some Japanese writing on her wrist." Of course, it was a shock for the parents. That way they already knew. They felt that it was their daughter's body. There couldn't be such a coincidence by chance that someone else would also have a Japanese tattoo like that on their wrist. They felt that it really was their daughter, and indeed after some time the police confirmed that their daughter was dead. In this place on National Road 94 from Komorniki to Środa, there's a ditch running along the road. This ditch is deep, about 3 meters. A local resident, Komornik, was simply returning home early the next morning and suddenly saw that something was lying in that ditch. Then he quickly realized that it was just a body. He saw a human corpse, called the police. The officers arrived and the examination of the body of a young girl began. At first glance, it looked like it could have been an accident, that some driver simply hit the girl with a car, ran away, and she fell into the ditch. But it turned out that the body was practically naked, that the girl was only wearing a bra and some kind of scarf. So, of course, the conclusion was that this wasn't a traffic accident, that there must have been some kind of attack, a murder, so they started the examination. Indeed, this was confirmed, but the important thing is that during the examination, the police assumed that this was a sexual assault, and during the examination, a biological trace was found on Dominika's body. Of course, you can guess what kind, right? And this was important in this case because it was the killer's trace, so now they just had to catch him. Well, the girl's body was taken to the Department of Forensic Medicine for an autopsy. Well, the doctor stated that it was an attack by some kind of madman, that the girl, when he counted all the blows delivered to the chest, the head, the neck, he determined that there were exactly 48 blows. So it was clear from this that someone was killing or wanted to kill, to have more than 100% certainty that they had definitely killed, that it was an attack by some madman. As for this pervert, because after all he undressed the girl, but on the other hand, the girl was not raped. So that was also some kind of clue. Why didn't it happen? However, here the police were dealing with a ruthless killer, with a man who was prowling around the area. Can you imagine what was happening in the area? A young girl, 19 years old, was murdered in such a cruel way in a small town where basically nothing ever happened. Until then, life went on as usual without any major events. And suddenly a high school graduate girl is murdered, and in such a way too. There was fear, panic. Girls and women were all afraid to go out because nobody knew where that bandit, the killer, actually was. Well, anything was possible. The first clue appears 2 days later on November 19th. First, someone accidentally finds Dominika's phone. The phone is lying in an allotment garden area. And then later, that same day, someone else finds her purse, which was lying near a store in Środa. Well, of course, it was just a guess. An allotment garden, a store. So maybe it's someone who leads that kind of lifestyle, for example, a homeless person, or someone who hangs around those kinds of places, drinks some alcohol, spends time with friends. Anyway, it's a person who doesn't work on a daily basis, someone who I would say comes from the lower social classes, and we need to look among people like that. But regardless of that, as I told you, it's an economic zone and there are a lot of workers there too. The police officers start looking in that direction to screen those who work there. So you have to verify, check everyone who is there, select them, because after all, there were also people there who were suspected of various types of crimes. Well, that place could suggest that it's a bit of a vagrant, a bit of a wanderer, a bit of a drunkard. Well, you have to look in those circles, and here the police officers from Środa were instructed to look in those kinds of environments, and indeed they drove up to the store. There was a group of men standing there, and as usual they were used to the police checking their IDs or wanting something from them because that's natural. Among them was also a man who had been stopped and checked many times before, but that evening he seemed to get nervous, as if he wanted to leave or run away, and he started behaving strangely. Given the social status he had been in for a long time, let's call it that, well, my police instinct kicked in a bit here. The patrol officers noticed that something was wrong with him, so they took him to the police car, brought him to the station, and handed him over to the detectives. The patrol officers took him to the station, also for another reason. Well, the detectives, while investigating Dominika's case, were reviewing footage from other cameras. And that's when they also noticed that someone was walking down the road sometime after Dominika passed by. But actually it was just a short time. In the same direction there was a man walking who was described as strange. Basically you could only make out a small part of his description because he had his hood up over his head. The fact that he was walking at the same time, of course, didn't mean much, but he could have seen something, or he could have been the killer. That's why a composite sketch was made of the man who was walking behind Dominika at the same time, and the one who was detained was a certain Zbigniew R., a 45-year-old, which is why the police arrested him. And Zbigniew R. himself was simply a man who lived in a municipal apartment. He used to work, but he was on a pension, actually a small pension. That's why he simply went around with a cart like that. He collected, delivered, and sold recyclables to earn extra money. But he also used to have a wife. Then everything fell apart for him. He got into financial trouble and also mental problems. He was treated psychiatrically. When he took his medication, let's say everything was relatively okay, but when he didn't, things were bad. Also, the neighbors knew about all of this, but since he helped them in some way, they considered him harmless, just a bit of a madman, but overall they had a good opinion of him. How do you remember? During the inspection, the police secured a biological trace, quickly tested Zbigniew, and it turned out that it was him, that it was his biological trace. Well, the interrogation began and the police already knew that it was him. He actually confessed very quickly. He said that he really did kill Dominika, that on that day, so November 17th, he was at home. He had some setbacks. It's hard to say what kind of setbacks they were because he didn't say, but something came over him. At some point he decided that he had to rape a woman. He just went out into the city, put a knife in his pocket, and he didn't care what kind of woman it would be or how old she was. First he went along that route, saw that some jogger passed him, and then he saw that Dominika was walking ahead of him. He caught up with her, attacked her, they rolled into a ditch. Dominika started to fight back, started to defend herself, and that's when he pulled out the knife and started stabbing her. As you recall, there were 48 stabs. He was killing, acting in some kind of frenzy of rage. I think he barely remembered any of it himself. Then he undressed her, and that was enough for him. As they say, he was sexually satisfied. That's why he didn't rape Dominika. Then he got up as if nothing had happened. First he went to his friend who uploaded a few more brutal pornographic videos to his phone, and then he went back to the same place again. He went into that ditch, took Dominika's things, took her purse, then walked out into the allotment gardens. He searched through all of it, threw away the phone, threw away some of the things, then threw the rest into a dumpster, and that's how it all ended for him. As he said, he did it simply because he was feeling unwell that day. The killer, Zbigniew R. was of course examined psychiatrically. The doctors determined that he was not mentally ill, that he was fully aware of what he was doing, even though he had previously undergone psychiatric treatment. He was sentenced to life imprisonment with the possibility of applying for parole after 35 years, but he will not have that opportunity. The doctors stated that he is a dangerous person, that even theoretically, if he were released after 35 years, he is so dangerous that he would kill someone again. Therefore, even if he gets out, he will end up in that facility for beasts. Remember, we also did an episode about it, and it's important that he will never return to kill someone again. We also often go back to such stories that are less known, happened locally, but it's important to remember them. I'm thinking about those victims. Often these are young girls, a high school graduate, just like in this case, her whole life ahead of her. It's important for remembering them, important for the families, and also important for those small towns, because this story still somehow lives among the people. We will definitely talk about these kinds of things again. Hopefully they won't happen, but as you know, life is just life, and that's all for today's episode. Of course, subscribe to our channel. Take care.
If you like Criminalny Patrol, support us by clicking the support button or the link in the video description. It's thanks to our supporters that we can create new videos. Thank you very much.